In this mini lecture, I'm going to talk to you about language. This is probably the topic that I could talk about forever, and we can't, but I would love to talk about it more. So what do we mean by language? We're so immersed in it, we don't often give it much thought. But Ludwig Wittgenstein said the limits of my language means the limits of my world. It means that we are constrained. Our understanding of the world around us is based on the language that we speak. And the language we speak can change the way we think, which you'll learn about more in this module. So what is language? Well, it's a system of words, sounds, and gestures that are common to a group of people that are used to communicate messages. There are different languages throughout the world, and that common to a group of people is what's important. Within that language, we have words. And all words are arbitrarily chosen symbols used by a speech community to name things: a chair, a microphone, a desk, a pencil, or something more abstract: love, hate, freedom. These words can be assigned and can be any combination of sounds put together, and it's spoken within a community. So some language facts, just to go over a few things, just a little bit of basics. There are more than 7,000 languages that are spoken across the globe. The language that is spoken, the native language spoken by the greatest number of people, is Mandarin Chinese. Other very widely spoken languages are English, Spanish, and Arabic. Now, English is spoken or known by the most number of people around the world. But this is because English is also considered the international trade language. And so here in the United States, we speak English as our primary language. When you're in high school, maybe you had the opportunity to take other languages. In many other countries, English is taught from a very young age, and many people are bilingual, or even more than one language. While we tend to think of language in the kind of this print form, really oral language is where the roots of our language begin. And more than half of the languages that are spoken in the world, there is no written translation for it. It was never written down. And so as cultures die, language dies, which is kind of sad. So what do we mean by this language stuff? What are characteristics of language? Well, one, language is arbitrary. We can name something any word that we want to. We could change it up. If we have got a new puppy and we want the puppy to stop and remain in the spot that it's in, we might use the word stay, but we could just as likely use the word red or shirt, anything. Whatever we want the puppy to associate, whatever behavior and word are associated together, is what the puppy's going to learn. Language is ambiguous. Words have multiple interpretations, and what something means to me may not mean the same thing to you. We're going to talk about that a little more in just a minute. Language is also very abstract. Now, not all words are abstract, but every word has a level of abstraction. The more abstract the word, the more room for ambiguity. So think of the word chair versus the word freedom. Those words, freedom is more abstract than chair, but even chair could mean different things. Is it a desk chair? Is it a reclining chair? Is it a kitchen chair? There are different kinds of chairs. What do you mean by chair? So in that sense, even the word chair is a bit abstract. Language is also changeable. New words are constantly being invented. The last 20 years in the technology explosion has seen an amazing amount of new words that have been necessary so that we have a common way to understand things. All old words fade. Old words change meaning. Old words are reinvented and come back around. And language is revealing. Word choice reveals our attitudes, our judgments, and our feelings about things. So these are just some of the characteristics of language I pulled out. There are more. I pulled out some of the most important ones. Now, if we think about just words, a word can have a denotative meaning. And the denotation or the denotative meaning of a word is the definition you would find in a dictionary. So a dog, a four-legged meat-eating animal kept as a pet or used for work or hunting. Landform, a natural feature of the Earth's surface. Music, the sound or voices of instruments arranged in a pleasing way. I could go to a dictionary, I could look those up. But there's also connotative meanings of words, and this is really where the meaning for people comes in. We need, of course, the denotative understanding, but the connotative meanings, the connotation of a word, is the emotional implications and associations a word may carry. So we have a picture here of what I would call a house. We could call it a home, we could call it a house, we could call it a residence, we could call it a dwelling, where a person lives at any given time. Any of those words would be an appropriate word to describe that picture there. And we could agree that is where a person lives at any given time. But let's take a deeper look into that. Let's look at the connotative, the meaning, the feelings that are associated, the emotion. Home. Well, that sounds a little bit cozy, loving. I can kind of picture a little fire going in the fireplace and people sitting around. The house. Well, that's the structure of the building, but it doesn't evoke a whole lot of emotion within me. The residence, that does sound pretty cold. Look, we call on college campuses, they're residence halls, right? They're not called residence homes. They're just a residence. A dwelling, to me, that's something a little more primitive, a little more basic. So while all four of those words could technically be where a person lives at any given time, the connotative meaning of all of those words are just a little bit different. So there's some other information that's going to be in the module about words and language that'll have you use as kind of some fun stuff to think about. But how does this relate to presentations? Well, the ancient Romans who studied and taught rhetoric is the art of public address. It divided its study and process into 5 canons. There are 5 canons of rhetoric. We're not going to learn about all of these. There's invention, disposition, style, memory, and delivery. I want to talk about style, because style does not refer to the clothing that they wore at the time. It referred to their language choices, their word choices. So if I am going to be speaking to a group of people, and I took this from the textbook, a public speaker, and I would say this applies to any speaker. What type of language, what type of words do I have to use based on the audience that I'm talking to? Is my audience familiar with my topic or unfamiliar with my topic? Can I use more technical language, or should I not use that technical language? What about acronyms, abbreviations, jargon? Lots of different specialties have that. We can't assume that everybody knows that in a general audience, and what we have in this class is a general audience. What about academic language, right? Should we use that? We use big words. My son accuses me to don't use big words with me. The application for communication, and I put presentations because that's something that we will worry about in here. That's where we'll do most of our oral stuff. But really it applies to everyday life. If I'm talking to a 3-year-old and they ask, why is the sky blue? I'm going to give an explanation that is familiar and being able to be understood by that 3-year-old. If I'm talking to someone who's an astrophysicist, it's going to be a completely different conversation. The way that this works is that it influences the language we use, the words we use, influence the clarity of our message. Am I really getting my meaning across? It also impacts the credibility that you will have or gain during a presentation. If you use language that alienates, your audience will no longer listen to you. So we want to make sure that we use language that is going to be able to be understood, it's clear, but also does not alienate people. There's more information in the course about words and language. It's a fun thing to think about. We're so immersed in it that we often don't think about the influence. So I hope that opens your eyes a little bit to the dynamics of language.